When you hear the name Florence Nightingale, what's the first thing that comes to mind? I bet it's that one image, right? The lady with the lamp, this compassionate nurse walking through a dark military hospital. But that image, as powerful as it is, doesn't even tell half the story. So let's get into the real story. Yeah, because while the story of the ministering angel is definitely true, it's incomplete. The real Florence Nightingale was this tough, brilliant, and absolutely relentless social reformer. And get this, she was a pioneering statistician who used data as her most powerful weapon.
This is the image we all know. This popular print from way back in 1891 is what really locked in that heroic persona for generations. It's a beautiful picture, no doubt, but it's the very thing that kind of overshadowed her most incredible data-driven work. All right, so let's start there, the lady with the lamp. How did this icon even get created? Well, it all started, believe it or not on some battlefield, but in the pages of a newspaper covering the Crimean War. It was this one sentence, just one, printed in the Times back in 1855, that gave her that famous nickname that stuck ever since. It just painted this picture of a solitary, almost saintly figure, and the public back home just ate it up. I mean, it was the perfect piece of wartime storytelling. And it didn't stop there. Just a couple of years later, the famous poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow basically immortalized her in a poem, A Lady with a Lamp I See. So you've got the press, you've got the poets. The legend was born. But the reality that little lamp was shining a light on, it was far from poetic. It was a nightmare. Which brings us to the horrors of Scutari, the brutal reality. I mean, the place she found when she got to the military hospital at Scutari, it was a complete nightmare. This wasn't some quiet place of healing. This was a house of death. So when Nightingale and her team of 38 nurses showed up, they walked straight into a catastrophe. The staff was totally overwhelmed, they were short on basic medicines, and hygiene, it just didn't exist. We're talking filth everywhere, busted sewers, no fresh air. Mass infections were just ripping through the wards, and they didn't even have the right equipment to cook proper food for the sick and wounded guys. And this just shows you the scale of the disaster. When Nightingale got there, the death rate in that hospital was a staggering 42%. 42! Almost half the soldiers who were admitted there were dying. And here's the kicker. This statistic reviews who the real enemy was. It wasn't Russian cannons killing most of these men. It was the hospital itself. 10 times more soldiers died from disease than from their actual battle wounds. Think about that. They were surviving the battlefield only to die from preventable sicknesses inside the wards. Typhus, typhoid, cholera, dysentery. These were the real killers at Scutari. Nasty, contagious diseases that were just thriving in all that filth. So this wasn't just a nursing problem, right? This was a full-blown public health crisis. So what happened? Well, after Nightingale basically demanded action, the British government finally sent in a sanitary commission. They flushed out the sewers, they improved the ventilation, and the result? The death rate plummeted from that insane 42% all the way down to just 2%. And this proved a really crucial point. It wasn't just the bedside care that was saving lives, it was sanitation. Okay, so this whole experience completely transformed Nightingale. She realized that to save lives on a massive scale, to really make a difference, she needed more than just compassion. She needed proof. She needed cold, hard data. Yeah, her time in Scutari taught her that being nice and appealing to people's emotions, that just wasn't enough to change this massive, dug-in bureaucracy. She needed a totally different kind of weapon. A weapon that could show them the problem in a way they absolutely couldn't ignore. She had to make the data speak for itself. And this was her weapon, the polar area diagram. You might also hear it called the Nightingale Rose. It was a revolutionary piece of data visualization for its time. So look at it. Each wedge you see is a month of the war. Those huge blue areas, those are deaths from preventable diseases. And the tiny little red slivers, deaths from battle wounds. All of a sudden, the proof was undeniable. Sanitation, not surgery, was the key to saving the army. So now she's armed with this newfound fame, and more importantly, the irrefutable power of her data. Nightingale returns to Britain not just as a hero, but as a real force for systemic change. And the change she created was It was monumental. Before her, the stereotype of a nurse was basically that Charles Dickens character, Sarah Gamp, an incompetent drunk. Hospitals were places you went to die, basically. But after Nightingale, nursing became a true profession. She used all the money raised in her name to set up the Nightingale Training School, creating this whole new generation of educated, disciplined, professional nurses. And she never, ever stopped. In 1859, she publishes what becomes the foundational textbook for nursing education. A year later, bam, she founds her groundbreaking training school. By 1873, she'd taken her methods to India, and you guessed it, drastically cut the death rates for soldiers there too. Her work was so transformative that in 1907, she became the first woman ever to receive the prestigious Order of Merit. So you see, the whole lady with the lamp thing is really only one part of the story. Her true legacy is so much more. She was a fierce public health advocate and, really, a data science pioneer. But despite all her incredible achievements, her family actually turned down a grand burial in Westminster Abbey. Instead, she was laid to rest right here, under this simple memorial in Hampshire, marked only with her initials and her dates. A really humble end for a woman whose data had shouted from the rooftops and literally changed the world. And this is incredible. We can actually still hear her voice thanks to a recording she made way back in 1890. And in it, she said this: "When I am no longer even a memory, just a name, I hope my voice may perpetuate the great work of my life." And her work, grounded in evidence and driven by this passion for saving lives, it has absolutely echoed for more than a century. Which, of course, brings us to today. Nightingale showed the entire world that clear, well-presented data could expose these hidden truths and drive massive, massive reform. So the real question for us is this. In our own world, a world filled with complex crises and just an overwhelming amount of information, what can we still learn from the lady with the diagram?